Rated John Ross.
Thank you all. It's very awkward to stand there and have your picture made like that. I don't know. The world doesn't need more pictures of goofy redheads. So, hey, I am so excited to be here with you guys tonight in one of the most beautiful areas of the world, especially at this time of year, to be able to come up here and spend time with so many retailers who are part of the IGA family, and some of you aren't, and to be part of an evening like this. So, my background, I am a former retailer. I started off as a teenager, like most of the folks in this room, cleaning bottles and moving buggies and commissioned salesperson, and I went on to work in other kinds of retail, but you know, in every event, you know, whether I was a store manager or I was a lot boy, you know, you grow up in this environment where everything's on fire all at the same time, and you're constantly responsible for both serving the customer and getting your job done and juggling all these priorities. And as you move up in your career, right, you work long hours, and you work weekends, and you work nights, and you work holidays, and you commit yourself, and you commit your family too, as my father did for me, but you commit your family too into the business in a way that, you know, at the end of the day, you hope makes a difference. And occasionally you get these little glimpses, right? You know, someone from the community comes and tells you how much they appreciate you, or one of your associates comes and says how much of a difference having their job made to them and to their family. Or better yet, they worked for you and they come back years later and they tell you how the start that you gave them helped them provide wealth and security for their family. And there's little tiny instances where you get to kind of feel like what we do matters. But on the day and grind, sometimes when you close up late at night and you're going home and all the cars are done on the road and you're driving home and you go, wow, this is really hard. And you look around to the left and right and you're only one on that highway, it can be tough. Evenings like this are designed for us to be able to put our virtual arms around each other and tell you how much we appreciate what you do. And it's so fun to be around in an environment, because we're an industry, like we're independent grocers. We don't bang our own drum. We're not ruthless self-promoters. We're not constantly going, look at me, and yet the things we do are so amazing. The difference we make in our communities, not just in the sale of groceries, but keeping those communities alive and vibrant, and the role that we play as leaders in the small business communities, right? That contribution is legendary, and it is heroic. And while we got a little glimpse, maybe during COVID, when people started really appreciating what you do, shoppers' memories are short, and today they're yelling at you because the deli chickens aren't out fast enough or whatever, right? And we're kind of back into a normal grind, but yet tonight we get to say thank you for everything you do. So on behalf of IGA, 6,556 retailers all around the world, thank you for what you do. I appreciate it. So I do a lot of different kinds of speeches. I talk about technology and emergence. I talk about consumer behavior. I'm a consumer behavior guy. I'm a marketing guy by trade. I have lately done a lot of speeches on the economy because of the global nature of IGA. So 6,500 stores, there's 2,000 in the United States. The rest of them are international. China, Australia, Fiji, Canada, South Africa, Poland, all these crazy places. And both domestically and internationally, IGA is growing. We're one of the fastest growing grocery chains in the world, which is really cool. And as a custodian of that brand, I get to represent all of those different family businesses. And I get to talk about them at kind of a different perspective than perhaps a lot of people do, because we are a truly global chain. But reining in from global, I kind of want to talk about us. I want to talk about our world, U.S. grocers, independents, operating in the markets that we do. But anymore, we can't just talk about the U.S. We can't talk about a domestic market. We can't talk about our state or our community, because as we saw during COVID, we're increasingly a global world. We are dependent upon supply factors and effects going on all across this planet in ways that you would have never guessed. And no matter what job you've got in your retailer today, or if you're a supplier, if your father or a grandfather worked for that business, You can go to them and go, my world is way more complicated today than it was when you were running this business, and that would be true because our supply chains, our technology, our infrastructure are inexorably tied together into this global economy. For good or ill, this is our world. And it seems like on a daily basis, our world is increasingly frightening. Every news show you watch, every feed that comes across your phone, the conversations at the water cooler in the morning, conversations over the dinner table at night can often paint a picture in which our world seems to be failing or in chaos in ways that are almost unimaginable. From changing prices and inflation, which is, of course, a big piece of our world, to distrust of major infrastructure systems like big business or our own government or even our own religious institutions, distrust everywhere you look, and that distills down into our consumers as well. Shoppers walk into our stores confused about what's true and not, about the food, about business, and about what's going on. Should they hold you accountable for inflation, or is that something happening outside of their control? And how do they make sense of an increasingly complicated world? And heaven forbid we start talking about global war. Certainly conflicts that we didn't hope to see or never expected to see in a modern and more advanced civilization, and yet they're very much a part of our life. And then, on top of all of that, it feels like the very planet may be conspiring against us. Not a day goes by where we have another disaster, another earthquake or fire or tsunami or massive rainstorms and flooding. And I get calls from our stores in Australia talking about raising money in order to pay for the floods that took place there. At the same time, I'm getting calls from our stores in South Africa talking about drought. At the same time, we're raising money for refugees flowing across the border from the Ukraine into our stores in Poland looking for housing and jobs and clothing. Right? Everywhere you look, it seems like bad news, right? And there's this word for this. Psychologists have created this new word. I don't know if this existed before. This feels like a 2023 word, permacrisis. The idea that sort of everything, everywhere is failing all the time. And if this kind of feels like your world, it is certainly easy to feel like this if you're a heavy consumer of social media, because it seems to be the broadcast channel most perfectly designed to create a feeling that everything, everywhere is against us. And yet tonight's a night of celebration. And I don't want to talk about any of that. I want to talk about our world from potentially a different perspective. And I want to use data to do it. Because despite the fact that news channels earn more revenue the more bad news they have, and therefore that system is designed to repeat it, and despite the fact that there are real economic drivers affecting our business, labor costs and fuel costs and cost of insurance and rent, we could spend an entire hour talking about all the things that are headwinds. And yet both in our industry and then as a species, as human beings, right, there's a lot of amazing stuff going on too. I don't know if you're a study of what's going on in the medical field. It seems like we have never had this many innovations taking place to improve the quality of health of human beings as we've had in the last few years, maybe not since the invention of antibiotics. Right, today we are re-engineering eyesight so that formerly blind people can now see, and they can see instantly, and we're correcting it at the gene line so these diseases in the future won't be passed down to their children. They're predicting a cure for Alzheimer's in our generation, and they're hoping new treatments will not only slow the onset of the disease, but will allow us, as we age, to not have to deal with what we've had to deal. If you've dealt with that with your parents, as I did with mine and my wife did with hers, one of those crippling diseases. And then we're talking about an end to genetically transmitted diseases, like sickle cell, for example. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, but there's an announcement that FDA is about to approve a treatment, a single treatment, that could cure the disease instantly. And not only cure it, but the potential to eradicate the gene line transmission of that disease so no future generation has to deal with it. And in this instance, genetically re-engineering mosquitoes so they're no longer carriers of malaria, so that these massive and hideous and costly in both lives and money diseases to treat and maintain will disappear in our lifetime. And this is all within our grasp. And if not our grasp, certainly the grasp of our children. We live in a world where childhood diseases may disappear, and we may make massive improvements in our ability in order to make the human life healthier, longer, more productive. And for companies that sell food, in which our target is anyone who eats, which is every human being, you want your collective target audience to be healthier. If they live longer, that's good for us. That means they buy our products longer. And if they're more interested in health, and they take health on as a core component of their identity, which I'm going to talk about here, that means that they're more likely to look for a partner who's in the long run going to help them be healthier. All these medical breakthroughs, all the scientific breakthroughs, and it's not just in medical science, it's like everywhere you look. This deck, actually, I have a version of this with about 50 slides of things that just go on and on and on and talk about massive changes and improvements in our world that you don't hear because the negative news suppresses them. For decades, we've been taught about how we're killing off all these amazing and perfect and special creatures all over the world, and yet these animals on this slide and 5 others that could follow it have been moved off to the endangered species list, and yet we don't hear that. We don't hear that. And then we talk constantly about all the things that we're doing to our environment, and there's a lot of ways to measure what we're doing to our environment, but if you actually look at, in our country, the amount of carbon that we produce per human being, which is a different metric. It's not the ones that you hear in the news. We're actually becoming increasingly and dramatically more clean as a society. No matter where you are politically on these issues, clean air and clean water are a good thing. They're a good thing for everywhere because they create healthy communities, and healthy communities live longer and they eat more, and that is a good thing for us. And then you bring it a little bit in more. You start looking at what the characteristics that might define if we think our society is moving in the right direction or not. And listen, labor rates is good and bad. We want people to have a livable wage. Certainly want that to be fit into our business model. But we've got this bizarre moment in time where there are millions of open jobs. Unemployment continues to be at or near historical lows. Anyone who wants to work can. And that's unique to our country. That's not true in China. That's not true in South Africa or Poland or Fiji or most of the countries we serve across the world. It's a miraculous thing that we live in a country where if you want to work, you can. And if you do today, you're going to make more money. And the combination of those two things we've never seen in the history of any modern society is that we effectively live at the cusp of 100% employment. And what's interesting about it, with all the negative news and all the things we talk about, is when you actually talk to consumers about how they feel about their world. Because there's this difference between perception and the reality of the world. And when you ask consumers to say, how do you feel about your present situation? That's the blue line. They feel pretty good. In fact, Americans right now feel pretty good about their own personal situations, as good or better than any time in the last 25, 30 years. Bizarre. But if you ask them how good their life is going to be in the near term, they're far more negative. Power of social media wrapping us, containing us, infecting us, changing our perception of what's really happening. We live in a world where unemployment is low. Yes, inflation is high, but it's declining, and it's declining at a rapid rate. Our supply chains are improving. They're not where they should be or they need to be, but they're getting way better. And our global standing in the world, if we looked on 1,000 different metrics, including the power of our own currency, is actually amazingly positive. And yet, the news media would conspire to tell us that it's a terrible thing. And this is a different way to look at it. This is a question saying, how do you feel about your own family's situation today? And Americans in general feel like they're doing okay, that in fact they're doing as okay today as they were during the last 5 presidential tenures. Americans think they're doing okay. But their prediction of what's going to happen in the future is far more negative. Isn't it fascinating that you can be both optimistic and pessimistic at the same time? And to me, that fits as a kind of a metaphor for this bizarre world we live in, where stock markets effectively at or near highs. You have amazing stability in employment in the United States. We have innovation taking place in every part of our industries, from biotech to communications to internet to these devices we carry around, technology that would have been unimaginable to my father or my grandfather when they were trying to operate a store. And they have become wedded into the part of our life and allow us to be productive in ways we've never seen. We also live in a world where a college education, you know, the cost of college is outrageous. The type of education that our young people need in order to survive. We've never had a time where entrepreneurialism is as close at hand as it is today. If you are a 25-year-old and you're looking at your future, you don't have to pledge yourself today to a large corporate entity. You don't have to make a decision to enter the workforce in the same way that your parents does. Your opportunity to create a new business, to do a startup, to create value in some new way is as infinite as your imagination and your access to a computer. And technology has allowed millions of entrepreneurs to create new businesses we couldn't have imagined before, to sprout up in just a few years. Creativity, imagination, courage in the face of challenge, these seem to be the attributes that define success for the citizens of America today. And those are really cool attributes. I love those. And hard work. If you were an alien and you were going to come into this room and you were going to say, hey, is the grocery business a good place to invest for the future? Like, should I put my money into this? Alien could also be a definition for an investor, someone in the capital markets, right? Some crazy person coming on deciding, are they going to buy a food business or they're going to invest in a grocery chain? And the first question would they ask is your industry growing or is it declining? So much of the rhetoric around us talks about slowing birth rates, people won't have as many children. Of course, immigration's worked up on this, but the reality is in our country, unlike many countries in the world, there are more people to feed today than there were yesterday, and there's more people to feed in the future. That's not true in Greece, that's not true in Poland, that's not true in Germany, that's not true in France and Spain, and much of the developed world in which their populations, Japan and China too, those populations are shrinking, which means their economies are massively at risk, because when your population shrinks, you have fewer and fewer young people, productive taxpayers, who are able to keep the government going as they increasingly have to take care of a larger and larger number of older people who are both sicker and less productive. And so you end up with this imbalance in the economy, which gets ugly fast. In our stores in China today, there are now tax incentives to people to have more babies rather than less. And if you remember the single child policy of China years ago, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. And it's created unprecedented economic turmoil. No matter what story you hear about China, no matter what you see, the economic conditions in that country are far worse there than they are in most of the developed world, and they're going to get worse before they get better because of this very phenomenon. So we're lucky here. We're lucky. Not only do we have a technology base and an industry which is creating innovation, we have developed an ecosystem in which anyone with a tiny bit of courage and a tiny bit of money can go out and create something new and create businesses that we've never seen and are perfectly imagined before. You get investments which are making human beings both live longer and be more productive during that race, and there's more mouths to feed, which would suggest being a grocer is a great place to be. I think that's really encouraging. And then there's something else. There's something psychic going on too. And that is two things that used to be disparate have glued together in consumers' mind. They've become a part of the way they see themselves and the way they see the world. And that's these two words, food and wellness. It used to be decades ago that we separated those. Food was the thing you do to keep your kids, from dying off. Or, give them an apple and a glass of milk and let's rock and let's go, right? And yet today we talk about food, and especially younger consumers talk about food not only as an aspiration. They want to eat healthier. They want to be more informed about the food they eat. They want to be more engaged in the decision. But they also want to understand our industry. Suddenly being a logistician or a wholesaler is a sexy, cool job. They want to know, farm to store to table, where did my food come from? How was it produced? What's inside it? Whenever you have an industry in which consumers become increasingly more fascinated and passionate about what you do, that is a license for growth in average ticket. So not only we have more people to feed, but they want to buy more of the cool things we want to sell. Now, in that environment, you also want to be in an industry in which you're trusted, right? You don't want to be a predator who's taking advantage of a consumer trends or someone out there siphoning off money at the expense of consumers' wellness, personal right. We live in a world in which business today is often cast in the news as being the bad guy, right? And predatory behavior by some really bad businesses, and particularly like in the pharmaceutical space, gives us a bad reputation as business people. That somehow, like Scrooge, we sit on top of the world and are just stripping away money for our own personal gain without investing in our community. And shoppers believe that, and they believe that about big business, and they believe that about huge swaths of the industry, automotive, large manufacturing. They believe that about their own government. They believe that about so many industries, but there's one place they don't believe that, and that's small business. Consumers believe that small businesses, regional businesses, local businesses are trustworthy because of what we do. We've earned that trust. Those late nights in the store, those having a customer come in asking for some random SKU, and then you get it for them the next day and they're amazed. Every kid that comes and wants to sell cookies in front of the store, and every time you give money to the church for their social, or whatever, the millions of things that we do. Every time you employ someone from the community, and you employ somebody's kid, or someone of your associates comes to you and says, I'm in trouble and I need help, and we help them because that's what we do. We never say no to anyone. It's threaded through our culture, and that has earned us something that none of these other businesses have been able to enjoy. And that's a continuing and sustained trust in a world in which consumers increasingly trust no one. How cool is it to be us? How good is it that we are us and not them? And then when you talk to consumers about what they want, okay, there's more of you to feed, you're going to stay healthy longer, you're more interested in healthy food, and you trust my channel more, then how can I get more of your business? And you know what they tell us? Do more of what you're already doing. Look at the chart. Price is certainly important, and statistically some of these are about the tied for the same. But in general, consumers are saying, I want value, I want price, but I also need high quality, high quality, high quality. I want freshness. I want a real butcher counter. I want someone who takes care of the produce. I want someone thinking about feeding me things they would feed their own family. I think it's so amazing and so unique because often when you do this kind of research, and I've been doing this for decades, I actually wrote a book on doing this research and how do you evaluate the disparity between what retailers often want to do versus what the consumers need. And whenever you get that grading between the way a retailer wants to sell you stuff, the way they want to force you into doing something, whenever that happens, right, you can see businesses destroy value. You can see once venerable companies, Sears and Kmart and some of the others, just disappear from Bed Bath & Beyond, disappear from the face of the earth because they become inward focused on their debt service or on their comp sales or their quarterly earnings or all the mechanics of big business that often stray leaders into doing things that have nothing to do with just taking care of the consumer. And yet the magic is, and you know it happens in your stores when you do it, you know the magic happens when you're able to look someone in the eye and they have a problem and they're angry and they're upset or whatever's going on in their life, and you walk up and you solve that problem and you walk away going, maybe what I do actually does make a difference in the 1,000 moments that take place in the day. And not just you, but all of your associates, all of these people that are out there in hourly and service jobs that, let's honest, no one wakes up as a teenager going, one day I hope I'm working grocery, right? Unless they're your kid, in which case they know they're going to have to work in grocery because you're going to put them there, right? But in those moments, they get this little taste that maybe something that I do matters. I do a speech on labor and how do you attract more people in labor, and one of the things I challenge us to do is look at your help wanted ads or how you promote your store. And the grocery industry, retail in general, tends to be pretty negative. We'll write a help wanted ad that sounds like this. Must be willing to work nights and weekends. Must be willing to work hard. Must be willing to be, have incredible work ethic. Must like to be yelled at. I mean, this is a whole list of things that we expect them to do because that's the way we were trained and raised, and that's the way our parents talk to us or whatever, right? And we want to apply that. And yet when you think back, you hated that. If you rewrote the job description as if we were ruthless self-promoters, if you wrote the job description about what we do, wouldn't you want to work for a company that supports every community request that comes through? Wouldn't you want to work for someone who gives more food to local food banks and feeds hungry people like we do? Wouldn't you like to work for a business that's taken thousands of kilowatts of energy waste out as we put new lights and new freezers and all the things that we do that are just, to us, is just operating our business? but which are part of this giant idea that as we become better, so do our community. That's aspirational. That is cool. And that's what makes me having this job so fun. It makes me so proud to be able to stand in front of you tonight and congratulate you and all the winners on the amazing things that you do. You know, if you talk to consumers and you say that trust slide, say, let's get a little bit more specific. Tell me who you distrust. They say, whether it's true or not, big retailers, big corporate brands, prepackaged stuff that looks like it came from a factory 5,000 miles away. There's an exercise you can do in your store where you sit down and you write, here's all the good things I do and here's all the bad things my competitors do. Put any competitor name in that and start brainstorming. Unlike Walmart, we don't ship meat from a frozen factory someplace 2,000 miles away. We cut fresh in our store today. It's a fun exercise to do. You'll find that you've got a lot more advantages over big competitors than you or your teams really think. Turns out the shoppers are doing that in their own heads. They already believe it. And then when you talk to them and you say, I want you to tell me what can I do more for you? And there's a lot of things. They always want cheaper prices. Everyone wants cheap, especially during inflation. That's nothing new. That's true today. It's going to be true 20 years from now. They always want more value, but if you dig deeper, they want someone more connected to the local supply chain. They want a store that's farm to store to table. They want someone who's committed to their community, hiring from and engaged with. And they want someone else who's fanatical about quality. Why would I buy from someone who wouldn't feed their own children from the food that they have in their store? Are you proud of this? How many times have you walked into a competitor's store, walked through the produce area, looked at the gray meat on the shelf and go, man, I wouldn't feed that to my dog. How can you put that out for your consumers? And that would never exist in our stores, which is why you're here. It's why we're special. It's why our industry, compared to the rest of the industry, is actually growing. Independence as a channel, as a class, our metrics are better today than almost every regional and national chain. And that's exciting. That's really exciting. And they're better in the United States than they are other places. And then finally, you know, they want innovative thinking, and they want people who are going to be fun to shop. And a lot of the people who are going to be awarded tonight, you know, we're going to be celebrated tonight, are going to be examples of people who are fun to shop. I want to come to the end of this by saying it doesn't take effort to be excited about the independent grocery industry. I don't ever want for inspiration or to have to rekindle my engine. All I have to do is go visit your stores. And I walk around and we tell you, show me what you do cool. And they're taking me around the store and showing me amazing things. And they're showing me the people that make it happen every day. And yes, there's 1,000 problems. There's always going to be 1,000 problems. But the ability to fail fast, to be creative, to try new things, to experiment with new stuff, and to be able to do it in a way that the shoppers respond quickly, boy, that's an exciting industry. And so again, on behalf of IGA and all of our stores, I want to thank you for letting me be here tonight. And I want to tell you how proud I am of all of you that I know, and I look forward to meeting the rest of you. Thank you so much.